of today's lecture is anthropological case study on catastrophic disaster. Subtitle is, echo, suffering, rebirth, and sustainability of indigenous Aita society after Mount Pinatubo eruption 1991. I suppose that you were not yet born at that time, 1991, or you were already born, but still an infant or a small boy or a small girl. Yeah, you remember just a month ago, a volcano in Iceland erupted, and because of the emission of volcanic ash and gas, and the airplanes could not fly over Europe. Some airports were closed for a week or for 10 days. Many passengers were stranded in airport, but fortunately in hotels. But that volcanic eruption in Iceland a month ago was rather small if compared with the one which occurred nearly 20 years ago. The Mount Pinatubo eruption in 1991 was the biggest in scale in 20th century. So today's lecture is about this eruption and environmental damages or hazard in that area, and also suffering of the people living around that area, around that mountain. The people were Aitas. They called themselves Aitas. Aitas were different from Malay Polynesian type of people. Aitar they still live, so Aitas are Asian type Negritos. They are rather small, and the skin is black, the hair is kinky, with big round eyes. They are very, cute and kind and harmless people. I lived with them for about 20 months, more than 25 years ago, in their village. So today, I will briefly explain their traditional way of life long before the eruption, and also the changes of their life and the social transformation. So that is why the title is Anthropological Case Study on Catastrophic Disaster, about eruption of a volcano. That eruption, excuse me. Okay, this is the topic of today's lecture. First, I will give a very brief background of my research and today's lecture. And then I will explain eruption of Mount Pinatubo in Luzon, northern Luzon in the Philippines, June 15th of 1991. And at the section 3, I will explain their traditional ways of life in the 70s and 80s. And section 4, I will explain damages and sufferings of Aitas by the eruption. And section 5, the topic will be different choices and diversified ways of life or ways of rehabilitation. I think Indonesia is also vulnerable to natural disasters. Tsunami damages were so serious And also, Indonesia suffered a lot of volcanic eruptions in 17th centuries, 18th centuries, and 19th centuries. So natural disasters is, I think, rather familiar or is closely related to your life or with your future. And section 6, I will explain exodus and awakening of ethnic consciousness as indigenous peoples. And at the last, I will explain concluding remarks. Okay, for Japanese students, I will distribute papers, handout. Okay, so sorry, I cannot give you for Indonesian students. Okay, let's start the lecture. The major eruption of Mount Pinatubo was on June 15th, 1991. That month, I happened to be in Manila, the Philippines, because I was 1 year research leave from April 1991 to March 1992. The topic of my research was initially the popular culture and political consciousness in Manila or among middle-class Manila people. But because the eruption caused tremendous disasters, sufferings for the people, I changed my research topic and I came to be fully involved with the rescue works and rehabilitation projects. So today's report is based on my own experience. The eruption's emission, the smoke, which went up to the sky, was more 30,000 meters above the ground. It's a very huge eruption. You can see this is not the eruption itself. This is after eruption. A month after the eruption, when it rained, the rain went down into the ground, deep in the ground. But under the ground, it was still hot. So those rainwater became a kind of explosion and emitted steam. So this is a steam. But this on the right side, far away, this was the Mount Pinatubo in 1979 when I was in the village, Kakilingan. Kakilingan was the name of a village which was located at the southwestern foot of Mount Pinatubo. The Kakilingan village was about 20 kilometers, or more than 15 kilometers, nearly 20 kilometers. But when it erupted, the ash accumulated about 50 to 60 centimeters, very deep. But after 1 year, especially during the rainy season, the water running beside the village carried mud and rocks, pebbles, and ash. And those volcanic ash and pebbles accumulated 1 meter, 2 meters every time when the river got flooded, when it rained very hard. So the village is now totally under the very thick accumulation of sand, more than 100 meters high or deep, of pebbles and sands and ash. Yeah, this is me when I was very young, and just at the back of myself was the peak of Mount Pinatubo. You can notice the building made by bricks or stones, and this